We are live and in living color. Mikey, he's Mikey. He's Michael Knight, and he's in Pasadena, California.
He's Vinnie. He's in Seattle, Washington. We've been pals for years. Did radio hither and thither. We're here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 10 past 10 or thereabouts on Facebook and on YouTube and in the little projector you have in your mind where you see Daffy Duck cartoons at will. You can summon
Yeah,
them and they right there. And Daffy looks at you and says, "What a maroon." Yeah, we're on that channel too.
what a maroon! Is it Daffy that says that, or is that the domain of Bugs?
That is Daffy Duck who said, "What a maroon." The first time I ever heard it referred to.
Huh?
I'm
Okay.
sure Bugs said it too because Mel Blanc did both voices.
Right. It's one of my favorite insults of all time. I mean, I've used it numerous times, especially talking about politicians.
I heard it on
What a
TV
maroon!
yesterday. I heard it on TV, and that was exactly the reference, Vinny. It was someone talking about a politician as a maroon. I
Yeah,
said, "Did that guy say maroon?"
yeah. I mean, it's easily one of my favorite insults. That and Spank Boy, uh,
Now, where did that come
of all.
from?
Now,
That's yours, right?
Spank Boy actually came from when I worked in San Francisco. There was a guy. Matter of fact, he works up here now. He's worked up here for years. B.J. Shea. I think you know BJ. He's been doing mornings over at KISW for, I don't know, 3 centuries, I believe. And he had this throwaway line that he used to call people. I don't even know if he used it on the air, but he called people Spank Boy when they were
Well,
subservient to somebody else, or an idiot,
aha.
or and it always stuck with me when I got to, and I started calling people Spank Boy. When I got to Seattle, I started using it,
Well,
more and more.
you put your own curve on it and made it your own, and I always
Yeah,
thought it was
yeah,
yours.
yeah. No, no, no. I wish it was mine. I wish I would have come up with that. But I give credit where credit's due. And years late, I mean, I mean, how long have I been calling people Spank Boy for? since
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 since the 1990s.
1993.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, or
and
earlier.
it it's
It's sort of an insult that needs no true explanation. You can just get the idea
right.
by
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. That's what I liked about it is you didn't have to sit there and explain it to people. You kind of knew what a spank. You knew that it couldn't be anything good.
Now
You
today,
know.
Vinny, see today they would just say he's my bitch, and that's no good because that's rough hewn. There's no poetry to it. There's no magic around it. There's no
Yeah,
imaging that's beyond what you can explain in English or any other language, including Slovakia, which is a very difficult language to explain anything in.
yeah. I mean, it may be the one language that's worse than English. And English is a
The-
pretty tough language. I've been trying to speak it for years, and it hasn't worked out all that well.
Well, you went to the Leo Gorsi School of Pronunciation, and you're a proud graduate. Or you used to say that, didn't you? Call it the Leo Gorsi School of
Yeah,
Better
I think the
Manners or
Leo
something?
Gorsi School or the Hunts Hall School. I forget. I might have used Hunts Hall. Who was, you know,
Proud
who
members of the Hollywood retinue.
right mangled the language. Leo Gorsi. Who was Slip Mahoney in the Dead End Kids comedies.
Yeah,
Several different names to those characters. But Slip and Satch, Slip could mangle a language in a way that you stop to think about it. It wasn't just that he said something that was like kind of off, and you just kept going. When
and you
he
say, I
would
think he's
say
got
something,
something there. Yeah,
yeah, you'd
I
say,
think
"Wait a minute," to peruse the inside of a hot dog, maybe just kind of, maybe I missed something in English class.
maybe it's something. Trying to get comfortable here in my chair. I'm slipping away from my chair. It's one of these deep chairs, and I don't want to sit back because the great thing about Leo Gorsi and the mangling of the language that he did with Hunts Hall is that he made perfect sense when he did it. You knew
Right.
exactly what he was talking about, and
If
you'd have to consider that his word was better than the real word.
young Johnny Carson, who was probably listening to that, to Leo Gorstein, Hunt's Hall, Mangle the Language, and Bowery Boys comedies that was shown at movie theaters at matinees in 1934 or 35, knew exactly what they were. In Nebraska, wherever he was,
Yeah,
knew
Nebraska.
exactly what they were talking about. Had no problem understanding, as did anybody else in the Midwest, understanding what these guys from the Lower East Side, New York, were talking about. And
Funny
and
thing
and and
about
it
Leo Gorcey had a serious face. He reminds me of Mo Howard of the Three Stooges in that everybody was out to have a good time and swim in the river and enjoy the adventure of that day. But Leo Gorcey was a leader. He had the responsibility of the neighborhood on his back. He was a serious man, not to be taken lightly. He was there
right.
making decisions.
He was the guy who controlled the neighborhood, no matter how you
Yeah,
looked at it, whether he did it ineptly or not ineptly. But he ran Louis in the malt shop, in the candy store. He ran the cop. He ran the neighborhood. If you needed something in the neighborhood, you came to Slip, and Slip
especially
Mahoney could get
if you needed information, if you had to know how, why, or where, or who,
right, right.
he was the man to see.
Their little gang, and they didn't want to. I don't know that they really wanted to ethnicize things at that point, but um, he was as powerful in his couple of blocks as any mafia guy without killing anybody.
He didn't kill anybody.
He knew where. Yeah, he just outstupided everybody. You
He would
know.
give them a lesson that they might not forget, or a talking to that would stick with them for a while. But he never had to take you by the front of your shirt and explain things to you. He made it clear whether it was a veiled threat or not. He was still the leader.
Exactly. And if and by the way, for those who may not know what we're talking about the Bowery Boys. You can find them on YouTube, also known, AKA, the Dead End Kids, also known as the Angels with Dirty Faces. A great way to watch them for the first time is the movie Angels with Dirty Faces with James Cagney and Humphrey Bogart and a number of different gangsters that you'll recognize because also Pat O'Brien, who
Oh God,
was
father,
was
father this, father that.
father, yeah, father everything. I mean, this guy was father something, father Jerry or father Bill or father George or father whatever in every movie that needed a father from
What year?
1920, a priest from 1926 until like 1967.
When they took away his robes.
Yeah, short of
He had a
short of short of Bing Crosby and Going My Way, he probably was the most popular priest or actor that portrayed a priest.
And he had an answer
In
for everything. He never
Yeah,
got caught. He never got caught without a comment. Or I don't know. That's God's will. None of that.
no,
None of the cheap homilies. Ah,
right.
my boy. And he sang a little bit
Yeah,
when he talked. It wasn't
now
exactly an
boys,
Irish brogue.
let's say
Yeah.
a prayer for a boy who couldn't run as fast as I could, and then they all go walking out of there.
What year was that movie? Because the reason I'm asking is there was room in on Manhattan, the island of Manhattan, for a Lower East Side for the Bowery Boys to exist, and that spot is there, but there's no Bowery Boys anymore.
Well, it was. I'm gonna say I'm gonna look it up, but I'm gonna say that movie was probably 1932, 1933, somewhere in that. Maybe a little bit later, maybe 38, but I'm gonna say 32 or 33.
And look,
Um,
the island of Manhattan is so big and so opulent and so fabulous. We have room for poor people and their children. There's no
well,
room for
I
poor
mean,
people or their children
in that
now.
1938,
Thank you, Vinny.
um, in that time span, in that time, those were the ghettos.
Yes.
Manhattan was the Lower East Side in Harlem, and much more the Lower East Side were the ethnic ghettos. You had the Irish that lived there, and then In 1930, in the middle 30s, um, things started to move out from Manhattan with the coming of the elevateds and the subway systems, and then people didn't have to live in Manhattan, but the work was in Manhattan, and people lived downtown. They lived in Hell's Kitchen. They lived on the West Side. I mean, really, up until the 70s and 80s, people lived in Manhattan, and they were just regular neighborhoods.
I first got to Manhattan in 1969, and I never could figure out why they called it Hell's Kitchen because a lot of the hell was gone from there. It was still a dicey neighborhood. I saw some interesting things there,
Yeah.
including a story that I don't have time to tell you right now. But the fact that it was Hell's Kitchen at one time was impressive to me. I said people lived here and they had a challenge in their life. Every day they got up, they walk out of their building. Where are they? They're in Hell's Kitchen. Makes you think about it. Makes you think about it. Am I going left or am I going right down here?
Well, it was a place that if you were of the lower socioeconomic class, you worked as a janitor, as a boiler guy, as a building engineer, as a doorman, as a truck driver. You could walk to your job or take the
Yeah.
subway to
Yep.
your job. There's not, mostly people that worked in Manhattan and um, worked in, Fifth Avenue, Sixth Avenue, the skyscrapers, the building engineers, so on and so forth. If you had to go up and down, up downtown, uptown, you took a train. But there was no real train except for 14th Street, and I'm trying to think of the other one uptown, but nothing really went across Manhattan. 14th
No, that
Street
was
was
that,
really,
that was you had to get a bus.
yeah, you had to either had to take a bus or hoof it. And it's not that far of a walk. I mean, Manhattan's only what 2 miles wide at its
Yeah.
in Midtown, if even that much. So it wasn't really that much of a stretch to say, okay, I'm living on uh, 39th and 10th, which is smack dab in the middle of Hell's Kitchen, and you work on Fifth Avenue and 56th, so you walk to work. You get up
Yeah.
an hour early, and unless it's crazy snowing or crazy cold, and even then you walk to work. As my father used to tell me, we wrapped ourselves in newspaper, and and that was thermal underwear of the day.
Which newspaper keeps you the warmest? The New York Times or
The
the Daily
Mirror,
News?
the
Or
Mirror.
the Mirror. Okay.
Yeah, the Mirror was the number one, and because the Mirror and the Daily News and the Post were tabloids,
Yep.
so they were printed on heavier stock paper,
Easier to get into your clothing for that extra layer.
easier to wrap. Yeah, you got more for less. Where the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, the Herald Tribune were all
Conventional.
foldovers.
Right.
Were all large newspapers, which were not good for reading on the subway, nor
Which
because you
is
had to have a special way of folding them,
and in New
nor
York you can't
keeping
get
you
on this
warm.
in New York you can't get on the subway without having like 3 opportunities to buy the morning paper, if not
Oh
more.
yeah, in those days, yeah. I mean, you had the newsboy who would stand on the corner and get you read all about it, and then you had the guy at the newsstand, which is the stand with some magazines and maybe some chewing gum or candy or like that,
He
and
was a
then
busy
you
guy.
always had the guy in the subway
Yes. Last
who was
chance.
selling. There was another um, newsstand
Right.
down in the subway, and
Oh
a lot of
yes.
times the guy in the subway also had a small fountain in there
Hmm.
where you could buy an egg cream or you could buy a spritz, a 2 cent plain.
But
You
there's
know,
no egg in the egg cream. That's something
no
that
egg
we
in
have
the
to.
egg cream and very little spritz in the spritz. But if you felt verklempt, you got a spritz. You drank it, or you dropped a couple of Bromo seltzers or Brioskis in there, and you went about your day.
You hope for the best after that.
You
You've
hope
taken
for
all
the
the
best.
medicine that the Lord allows.
Right, you had your two little Alka-Seltzer tabs, put into your 2 cents worth of seltzer, and you revved it up, you drank it, you got down to the platform, and you started blowing everybody out on the platform as the gas released from your body.
Well, I realize the New York Jets are not playing in the Super Bowl or
Oh, did you?
anywhere, but I know that you're a football fan, and it's time for you to make your picks, Vin, for the Super Bowl this Sunday.
I've paid less attention, Michael, to this Super Bowl and maybe almost anyone in recent times.
How come?
I don't know. It just doesn't have a grip for me. It doesn't have just a big attraction for me. Um, but
Well,
I like.
pretend.
Yeah, no, no, I know. I'm just kind of setting it up. Uh, you know, uh, listen, I can't imagine that God, if there really is a God in heaven, that He would allow the Philadelphia, to experience two championships in a sports, even being, I mean, it's even hard for me to believe that they're allowed to be there. That something didn't happen to have the 49ers win that game, but
Well,
be that as it may.
they had a great season even without the 49er game.
Yeah, but I'm going to go with the underdog. I'm going to go that Kansas City and uh, young Mahomes, whose father is an ex baseball pitcher,
Oh
of the
yeah.
Seattle Mariner, and for a moment, that he will prevail on the day and send the Philadelphia fandom home sad and
I
crying.
think you're right. I think you're right. And I think that the reason for the victory, for Kansas City's victory in the Super Bowl, is one guy, and that's Patrick Mahomes. But we don't give enough, because he's from the old school. Andy Reid doesn't get all the credit he deserves as the head coach. Not that
He should,
he should indeed.
ex-
And
except that
go
he's
ahead.
in maybe one of the worst commercials
Oh God.
of all time.
He
That
looks like
State Farm.
he looks like he's taken ayahuasca and is having a vision in the jungle.
They must have just paid him a ton of money to do that, and he probably resisted up until the last zero. Uh,
Well, obviously
you
they
know,
didn't have time for more takes. Andy, could we try it a little more human like? When you say
no,
this, say it as if you were a human being.
you get one take. You get one take. Roll the cameras. I'll give you one practice, one rehearsal, and then one take, and then I'm up and out of here. I don't even want to be sitting next to your clown with the red sweater from State Farm that's pretending that he knows me like he's my best
Right.
buddy. Meanwhile, you guys are out canceling policies and well, not canceling policies, but refusing to write policies on Kias and Hyundais. So, what are you gonna do?
I'm picking Mahomes. I should say Kansas City, but I'm really saying that one man's will and talent is going to make the difference. It's going to be Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah. Are we making too much, or are they making? Because I'm not making. It really didn't cross my mind, obviously, but are they making too much about the first time two black quarterbacks are meeting in a Super Bowl? I mean, is it? And I'm not black, so I don't know. But is it that much of a point of conversation in the black community or
I think
in
it's a
the
topic of achievement and pride.
okay? Because it was weird. I didn't realize until I heard it that it was in fact the first time two black quarterbacks had met. I only wish Rush Limbaugh were alive to see it.
But
And
isn't it nice that he's not alive to see it or hear it or even
it's a
tell you what he
pretty
thinks
damn tall order for me to say that. But it's that the point has been driven home, and I applaud it. I guess it doesn't register me anymore that somebody is, the quarterback is black or white, except for Colin Kaepernick, because he had the nerve to challenge the system. And I,
And
I mean,
and and how did that go?
it didn't go well.
It did not go well.
It did not go well, and the system still needs to be challenged more.
Yes.
No matter how much they want to, dress it up and this and that and the other thing. It's how many black head coaches are there? What's the representation of players to coaches in the league?
Or how do
What
you get
is
around?
that kind?
How do you get around the rules that say you must interview black coaches or consider them for head coaching jobs and assistant coaching jobs? How is are those rules evaded by owners up and down the league to get the white coach that they want without interviewing anybody else?
Well, yeah, and I mean it's always been to me. I mean that that's the thing where I look at it and say, there's where the work needs to be done. I hope that the fact that there's two black quarterbacks facing off against each other in this Super Bowl, doesn't take away from the real problem, which is you still have a good old boys club. Despite the league trying to legislate it and do something about it, you still have the league, this good old boys club not hiring African American coaches.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is that they've given the problem of the good old boys club to a bunch of guys to solve it. And guess who he gave it to? They gave it to the good
To a
old
good old
boys.
boys club.
And the good old boys said, we'll solve this in a way that will please the good old boys and placate the league and inspire the players. But in reality, what we're doing is we're giving it a new paint job and keeping the exact same problem in place. But there's another
Right.
problem that came out yesterday, and I was shaken by this because the medical study said that over 90% of all players in the NFL, even if they played only 1 or 2 seasons, exhibit problems with their brain as a result of concussions, or not just concussions, just being slammed around as part of the nature of all the tackles, all the falling, all the training, all the times you go over backwards and don't know where you are in a pile of 400-pound men. And that story was resonating on cable news networks. It was not carried by ESPN, never made their headlines, and it was not part of the NFL's news when they were reviewing the year and what they had to do. And what it was a topic that ESPN could have easily run with, but they chose not to. And there might have been an editorial reason that's valid that I don't know about. But it seems to me that was a big story to be breaking on Super Bowl weekend.
Well, Mikey, it's one of those stories that, listen, I found this to be the case much more when I got to Pittsburgh than out here in the West, but it's still here out here in the West as
Yeah.
much, and that is they make big money. They know what they're doing. If they want to slam their heads into each other, well, for my entertainment, that's their business.
Oh,
You know,
sure.
um, because when I got to Pittsburgh, this was a huge story for us in Pittsburgh. I thought, and the reason it was huge in Pittsburgh is one of the doctors that was doing a lot of the research on this was located at University of Pittsburgh Medical Center, UPMC.
And that's a
It was
big deal.
right. It's one of the places. Dr. Joe Marone was one of the top guys in this CTE research and how the brain and and how it was affected from a young age, not
Yes.
just
Pop
Not
Warner.
just that it happens when you're 18 years old. You start to get this when your old man suits you up to go out there, and so he can watch you run around and hit other kids. The groundwork is being laid for the calcification of your brain.
Plus, who's more likely to get a concussion in their lifetime? A kid that's 10 years old who plays 3 sports, or somebody who's in the library reading about Spinoza? The
Well, when the
fact
kid
is,
is
if you're an active kid, you can get a concussion rather easily.
yeah, and when the kid is if the kid walks out of the library and he's put upon by 5 or 6 of those athletic kids who like to
There you
kick the
go.
crap out of somebody, then he's just likely to get a concussion, I guess. Um, but it's something that football will pay lip service to. But I can't tell you how many football players I've talked to that have said I would never let my kid play football. I would
Yep.
never in a million years let my child play football.
I
And
think I think that's a wise choice for a parent to make.
yeah, I mean, these days, again, you just don't know what the science is incomplete. You can't stick a scope in somebody's brain and study it while they're alive. You have to do it after they're gone.
Yep.
And there are, I know that Coach Lambright's daughter and son are very active in this area here. They donated Coach Lambright's brain to science, and they slivered it up and cut it up and have been studying it at the University of Washington to try to understand. He had, I guess, serious CTE, and there's, I mean, how do you fix this?
In what
What do you
position did he
do?
what position did he play? Was he a
He
lineman?
was a he was a yeah, I think a defensive lineman if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And he got popped in the head a lot, as many of those guys did. I mean, and so what the NFL does is they dress it up. They come out with a new helmet. It has a this and a that and shock absorbers and McPherson struts and 6 lug tires and all this other crap. But the problem is, and again, your brain moves inside of your skull.
It's
There's
too late.
nothing they can put in your skull to stop your brain from impacting your skull when you get hit. From a punch, from a collision, from anything. You can't stop it. There are measures you can take to lessen it, like, there's certain stances you can stand players up, so the likelihood of the head to head contact is not as much, but that's not as exciting of a game.
And two fast guys who are 6'5" running at each other can't adjust their direction within inches to avoid that kind of a collision. It happens every day.
Yeah, and it's the repeated. It's not just
Yes.
one shot does it. It's the consistent repeated practices and playing here and playing there. My nephew, who is quite an athlete, I advised him years ago, and his parents don't put him in football. Let him play baseball, let him play basketball, but don't put him in football because what we're seeing from these injuries, from these players, is that their brains are being injured. And
Not to mention their knees.
yeah, but listen, if I can't walk, that's a whole different thing. If I have to sit in a chair and have my kid feed me when I'm 38 years old, and we've seen the result of that, I mean, we've seen it with boxers. We've seen it throughout the years. We've all known football players that, it used to be, you got hit in the head one too many times.
Yep.
And they're a little goofy. But the reality is it's not just one or two. It's more
No.
than you want to believe.
And there are apparently gradations of dementia that go along with it. So the actual player doesn't notice it. In fact, the change that comes up most often that they're measuring is this anger and this rage that comes with not being able to process information or express yourself. The brain's not working correctly, and creates a frustration that comes out, especially in football players who have been led a physical life. If they want something, they move it out of their way. They don't walk around it, and
Right.
they express themselves to their family members and their loved ones in a violent way that's out of their control.
Right. They're taught that your strength will allow you to dominate any situation that you're in. That if you are strong and you assert yourself and you get down there and you push and you violently move people, that will accomplish what you're looking to accomplish, which is to stop the
Right.
other person. And it is tough for players who now, who either stop being players or even while they are still players. Sometimes to turn that spigot off, just like it's tough for some soldiers that come back from war zones
Right.
that have been mentally conditioned to kill, kill, kill. It's tough for them sometimes to turn that off. There's certain personality
Yeah.
types that don't turn it off.
They've adjusted themselves to be at war to protect themselves. So they're in a constant state of alert to protect themselves. And that might mean eliminating a threat or a perceived threat. And it could get pretty dicey.
Yeah, it's again, and I don't know that anything will ever really happen to correct it because we're a country that many people didn't want to shut stores and stadiums down when a million of their fellow countrymen were dying.
That was a hoax, I
You,
thought.
I mean, so what do I mean, what's the, how do you, how do you justify that? How do you say to somebody, well, we're not going to let you get down into that stance. We're going to stand you up, and you're going to have to run at each other. Well, that's a game for pussies. That's
Yeah,
it.
that won't
Nobody wants
do.
to watch that on
What happened
Sunday.
to the scrum? I need a scrum.
What happened to the real men? That I
You know,
remember in the '60s. I'd watch the Raiders, and those guys would be bloodied and bowed. That's the one I always loved. Bloodied and bowed. What is
and they
what is
would
bloodied
indeed.
and bowed? Do you have any idea?
Bloodied means you have your blood or someone else's blood on you, and bowed means that you're slightly crushed by the activity of the day. You got that
Right.
warrior, that beleaguered warrior look about you.
They
Like you
came
gave it
off.
all.
John Facenda. He was responsible for that.
Yes.
They came off the field bloodied and bowed, but yet they hadn't given up a piece of Raider turf.
And
I
he almost
mean,
made it to the bench, but Phil Villapiano stopped him in his tracks. The So that story had an opportunity to be played out last night, especially the night that Hamlin went to the awards uh, dinner to thank all the people on his medical team that had saved his life. And he didn't say it last night, or I didn't hear him say it, but it's been reported that he will, comma, play again.
yeah,
And
yeah, I've
I
seen that.
wonder if that's the best I. Because we're not talking about a concussion there, we're talking about another unrelated injury to concussions and the damage that it makes. But he's been given, I guess, the opportunity to decide for himself if he wants to play again.
It's hard to tell a man or a woman or anybody what they should do with their life. But if I guess he's got the best doctors looking at him,
And
and I guess
Vinny,
that
we say
he.
we give him a standing ovation for going back. I'm going to play again. Yeah, we'll watch again.
Well, yeah. Now we'll be watching him. I mean, it's like NASCAR. Now we'll be watching him on every play to see if he collapses. I mean, now it really becomes. It becomes. Let's watch. Buffalo will be on national television 17 times next year
And they'll
because everybody's
say,
going to be watching to see if this poor guy, his heart seizes up on the field.
"Is that the guy number 3? Yeah, he could die. Watch, keep your eye on that guy. There's a
Yeah,
game within a game going on here. He could die." But the fact is, any of them could.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a dangerous game. All the helmets and all the pads and everything else isn't going to make that any better. It can be the blows can be softened, but it is a dangerous game. And I know you were going to get the what about football? I mean, what about baseball? You're throwing a ball at what about this? How much are we going to
Yeah.
protect ourselves in the world? What are we? America's turning into a bunch of wimps. We
It
can't
took a
go out
long
there
time
and
to put
play
up the
football.
took a long time to put up the backstop nets to protect the fans who are paying the
Yeah.
freight from foul balls that come back at 180 miles an hour.
Well, it says right there on your ticket,
I
not
know.
responsible if you get hit by a ball. I mean, that's your problem, not ours. Yeah, we'll send somebody down with a cup of water. Somebody whose regular job is driving a taxi or something, but they get the job at the ballpark so they can watch all the games for free. We'll send them down with something. Maybe we'll send the team doctor over to shine a light in your eyes.
By the way, those
But
signs you
that's
see, the signs you see in parking garages saying it's not their fault if your car gets broken into, and the warning on your ticket saying it's not their fault if you get hit by a ball, are just the type
yeah.
of things that lawyers love to say. They bring the guy into court and say, "You claim here on your ticket that you're not responsible, and yet who built this stadium and what? Why is it here? What's your business? What's your business plan? You sell tickets to people who sit in the front row." And you put on an exposition that hurts individuals periodically, and you claim it's not your fault. In fact, it is entirely of your making. This injury could have been predicted by anybody, but you didn't put up a net, and you claim
Well,
that the
but
injury is not your fault.
but you paid your money. You takes your chance.
That's not a
I,
legal position.
you
That's
know,
a financial position, but it doesn't go far in the legal world. But when it comes
but
time
that
to assign responsibility,
but when you contribute enough money to to politicians, you can get the laws written in your favor. You can get
all that
judges.
goes
You can
away.
get different people to back your position, depending on where you are. I'm sure if you get hit with a baseball at City Field, you have a much better chance of recovering something than you would if you got hit with a baseball somewhere in Louisiana at a minor league stadium
An
or
LSU
somewhere.
game, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere where the money rolls freely to the different politicians and judges and lawyers who write these laws.
Another land where the good old boys still rule.
Yeah, I mean, look at the whole thing going on with Brett Favre down there. Where you
He's
know,
suing Aaron Rodgers' best friend McAfee for comments he made on his show.
well, it's kind of funny because I don't know that he should be suing anybody. I mean, I don't know the whole story down there, but it seems like Brett certainly benefited from a lot of money because he was Brett Favre, and the money that was supposed to go to different programs to help people went to his gym that he wanted to build.
For his
Uh,
daughter's volleyball, I think it was his
yeah,
daughter.
for the volleyball team or something like that. But that's what you get down there. I mean, that stuff has been going on in Louisiana and Mississippi and Alabama. That's why you have, Jackson, Mississippi. You can't drink the water.
That's
Uh,
why in Arkansas, your governor is Huckabee.
oh God,
Ugh.
there's what a mess that is,
There's a
boy.
genetic signal that needs to end.
Well, you got the one eye going this way and the one eye going that way. I mean, does this woman have a driver's license?
It's hard to say because she claims she does, and that's where the argument begins and reality ends.
I mean, she was scary when she was, we're talking about Sarah Sanders, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, who was elected a few weeks ago by the grace of the devil, governor of Arkansas,
I think
and
she needs other names. Sarah Huckabee Sanders Harris. Can that be it?
Well, it should
Sarah
be something
Huckabee
more in tune with Arkansas, shouldn't
Murgatroyd.
it?
Oh, that would
Sloth
be
or
De
or
Goiter.
yeah, something like that. Don't
Sarah
yeah.
Huckabee Sanders Goiter Harris. She just has to work on that. She doesn't have enough names. I think it could change her career.
Yeah, she's yeah, not that she would want to play off of her father's name or anything like that. But she makes sure it's spelled in capitals. I mean, here's a woman who stood up and told us this grand story about making Donald Trump a hero without even mentioning his name. Uh, I don't know. It's another part uh, of a system down there that means more than likely that a sucker is not going to get an even break. That
Well,
the
we
average
can
person who's not a sucker isn't going to get an even break.
criticize them, but she's fighting the cultural war right now that the left has foisted upon her, and they're after everything. They're after her books and her car and her kids and the future. It's all she can do to fend them off. With one hand tied behind her back, she's fighting the cultural war from Arkansas that's going to keep the people there free. Free of what? I can't exactly say because it's a long list. Free of education, free of discernment, free of the ability to judge for yourself, free of the ability to complain when your rights have been taken away from you instead of applaud the fact that they're gone.
What are they
Those
looking
are the
for in
freedom.
Arkansas? What is it? What would make them happy? What would
Social
what, you
control.
know? I mean, it's a state that gave you Bill Clinton.
And
What
we got to
what's
give him
gonna
back.
make you? Yeah, what's gonna make you happy? What's gonna what do you want? Do you want the whole country to step in line behind your brand of Christianity? Is that what's gonna make Sarah Huckabee, um,
Sanders, Harris, Murgatroyd.
Murgatroyd, and everybody else happy? Is that what you want? I mean, what is it that they want? What
But
is it that this
that
woman?
never works because nobody fights like a bunch of Baptists figuring out which element of the Baptist world they belong to. The Baptists hate Baptists worse than anybody. You think they'd be offended by Catholics or Jews, but no, it's the Baptist who believes in one other verse than they do.
Excuse me.
The Baptist who sings different songs than they do. The Baptist who goes into a different way. We have a pastor. Well, we have a minister. Heathens, brother of the
Yeah,
devil.
I
So the answer is
it
nothing's going
must
to make them happy.
yeah it must have irked them so much that Joe Biden came out on top in the State of the Union address. That they thought he was going to go in there and he was going to fail, and they were going to spend the rest of the week talking about how weak Joe Biden is, and how could this guy possibly want
Nope.
a second term to be president? Look at how he screwed up the first 2 years of his
Yeah.
presidency. When the reality is, he's not perfect, but the average person that doesn't watch Fox News is better off today than they were when Donald Trump was in office.
I
The
saw
only place that they're not is in maybe their 401k is a little less money, but it's coming back up too.
the idea that Joe's on a roll occurred to me yesterday when I saw him make a speech, and he was still in that attitude. Whatever he was doing, whatever he summoned from within him to put a little sharp edge on his personality, is working. And he was in charge, and I guess his communication skills seem to be sharpened, and he's more pointed in his delivery. And I applaud it because I've criticized him many times for being too much of a grandpa. Gets down in his voice and he can't get out of the thing, and it just becomes a mumble. You got to be an orator to be a president, to be a successful one, and it's a lost art. I'm glad that he's making his public his public comments more pointed.
Well, listen, part of the appeal, there's two appeals to Joe Biden. Number one is that he is the grandpa type guy. he is the guy that, um, when you go over his house on Thanksgiving, he's standing by the door and one eye on the football game and one eye on making sure that you and the kids get out of the car okay and up the stoop all right and into the house. Grandma's in the kitchen. Go ahead and get in there, and the guys go and they watch the football game and kid around and talk. But he's the shepherd of that. He's the person that makes you feel that it's all going to be okay. So that's one of his strengths, and the other strength is as we talked about on Wednesday, is that's his turf.
Yep.
He's lived there for so many years. He knows every crack and crevice in that building. And a couple of idiots that come from Georgia and Arkansas and here and there, they're not going to match him. They don't have the experience. They don't have the background. They're kids that are wet behind the ears. And if they don't have somebody in the White House that's pushing them along and telling them what to do, they got no game. Joe's got game.
As we saw yesterday, that their commission on MAGA weaponization of the federal government was so poorly organized that their own witnesses were disqualified by cross-examination, which means that these aren't people who are planning anything, Vinny. They're not prepared to organize themselves in a professional way at all. It's a sideshow that's put on like a high school play with no rehearsal and no attention to detail and no attention to performance or credibility. They've lost even the illusion of credibility.
And what's worse is while you get, guys like Jim Jordan sitting there trying to make like he's as smart as Adam Schiff, which I don't think he'll ever be, or Liz Cheney. I mean, he couldn't be as smart as Liz Cheney if he went back to school and stayed there for the next 25 years. He couldn't be as smart or as tenured or as experienced as Liz Cheney is. She grew up in this stuff, man. She knows how to be ruthless. She knows how to be. She knows the turf like Joe knows the turf.
Family business.
And right. And while these people are dicking around trying to figure out things that need fixing in this country, things that need to be attended to, things that need for people to fix them, still stand on the side of the road with nothing happening. And the Republicans are stupid enough that they will talk themselves out of any chance of winning an election in 2024. They're almost talking themselves out. Now, I realize these things go up and down, but the reality is, as we saw in the midterms, the groundwork that's being laid now is the groundwork we're gonna see.
And crazy states that have been so conservative for so long, Arizona, Texas, and especially Georgia, are changing their demographic right before our eyes. We're watching a red state become a blue state, and it cannot be stopped because it has to do with just the people who live there and the decisions that they make when they go to vote. That's why voting is under attack in all those states, to keep as many percentage points of those people out of the voting booth as possible.
Well, what they're going to find out, I think, Michael, is that the people who get Social Security, the vast number of people in this country, and it's more and more of them that become eligible every day,
right,
are not going to let the Republicans, take it away from them. I worked hard all my life for my Social Security. You're not giving it to me.
You're getting it back. The Republicans have to be reminded that it's not their money; it's your money, Vinny.
Right. You're not giving me. And yeah, if you want to come up with a reasonable thing that says, well, we want to make sure that this thing is good for future generations. We want to make sure that that this, that, or the other thing. Well, you know what? Come up with something. But just don't willy-nilly say, well, we want to make sure that this thing expires every 5 years
What
so
we
that
want to
we
do,
can
yeah.
hold it hostage.
Figure the way to fix something as complicated as Social Security is just to shut it down. How about that? Done. Okay, next case. What else do you want me to fix?
Yeah, and leave people in a state. And it seems like, and I'm not just saying all of them are Republicans, but the majority of them are. It seems like this Congress, the people that we have sent to Washington, have no problem not holding people's checks, holding people's lives as hostages for what they want to forward as their political agenda. And to be honest with you, I think people are getting sick of it. And I think that there are people now that are young enough and involved enough to hopefully do something about it. But yet, they return a Ron Johnson
Oh my
to
God.
the Senate. They return people
He's
to
a
the Senate
maroon.
that have
We,
no place, no sense at all.
what would
No,
Daffy Duck
no,
call them?
yeah, maroon. I mean, the guy is
Maroons.
a maroon. So as we get what we deserve, Michael.
Boy,
We
we
get
are we're
what,
not very deserving, are we?
and if we keep voting the Ron Johnsons of the world, the Marjorie Taylor Greens of the world,
Oh boy.
uh, the Lauren Boberts of the world, if we keep
Gomer.
voting and Bobert only won by, I don't know, 31 votes or something like that.
You got a
So,
Bobert over here and a Gomert over there. Bobert Gomert.
yeah. Yeah, if you put a guy like Louis Gohmert into Congress and send him, a guy that every time he talks, his teeth come spitting out.
If you worked in a
Uh,
car wash, he drowned.
yeah, he's. I mean, if that's your idea of competent representation, boy, the baseball owners who don't put the nets up have nothing to worry about.
No.
If he's what you consider competent representation,
And I don't know if he played center in high school, but he took a couple in the head. It seems obvious now.
well, he just, I mean, again, the whole system, and it's never going to change because we allow people, excuse me, we allow people to take political contributions. We allow people to take money from corporations. We have decided that the heartless, soulless corporation whose sole motivation is to extract as much money out of you as possible and give back little more than they give back with their product. We've decided that they are equal to a human being.
And that's why our election process takes years, because think of all the money you can spend running for president. You run for president longer than if you win the office, you've been running for president longer than you actually serve as president, and spent
Yeah,
and spent millions of dollars of other people's corporate money to do it.
and when
Vinny,
you look at
we're getting close to the weekend here. Tell us about your show
yes,
for tomorrow.
we are getting close to the weekend. We're gonna we got a couple of cars to talk about tomorrow.
Okay. I'm
The
excited.
one that I love is the G90, the Genesis, the best car I've driven in a couple of years, I think.
Wow.
And then yesterday, I took the 4,000 pound antidepressant,
What was that? A
the
Hellcat?
Audi S5
Ooh.
convertible. It was 51 degrees yesterday, so I put the top down on the convertible and went for a cruise up Route 9. And I got to tell you, Michael, I'm here to say to you in no uncertain terms that the answer to Americans' problems of depression and feeling bad is a convertible. Buy a car that you can put the top down on and turn the music up on. Let the wind roll back through your hair
Does this
and
top
let
go down,
your
or does it come off? Top go
no,
down
it
or come
goes
off?
down. goes down into the. It's a convertible. It goes down into the boom into the back, and it's you're driving along and the sun is shining. Yeah, it's a little cold, but you crank the heater up. You put the heated seat on. You put the
Yeah.
seat massage on. And let me tell you, you're driving up Route 9 and you're just looking at all of the beauty of the world, and you're reminded that this is it's an incredible place we live in.
Better
You
better
know?
than going to see the doctor. Well,
Yeah.
it's called the L5.
The S5, Audi S5
Yeah.
Cabriolet. And it is just an incredible car. And also, we're going to talk about what should a Department of Motor Vehicles know about your health. How much do they need to know? The state of Maryland has suspended somebody's driver's license because they have sleep apnea.
No, they don't know what sleep
And
apnea is.
and first thing is, how did they find out that this guy has sleep apnea? And secondly, um, should there not be an examination here? Should there not be, if the Department of Motor Vehicles is going to suspend your license for sleep apnea, should there not be a state doctor who looks at you and says, well, you have it so severely that you're full, or you're okay to drive here, but you're not okay to drive? I mean, it seems to be a very heavy-handed. I'm not against, suspending somebody's license to drive if they have a medical condition that impairs their ability to drive, but to do it willy-nilly because you have, reason to believe. This is not a reason to believe society. Well, actually, you know what? I'm wrong, Michael. It's turned into a reason to believe. Yeah,
Unfortunately, it's worse than that.
it's turned
Well, Vinny,
into a
have a good
society.
show tomorrow, 8 o'clock in the morning.
8 o'clock, we'll be doing a show on 11. We will be on 11:50 tomorrow. They got something going on, so we'll be here on YouTube. Michael, it's our first show on YouTube, so we were able to go to YouTube as well as Facebook. We'll be doing that from now on, if the Lord's willing and the creek don't rise.
I want to say goodbye to Burt Bacharach, who died yesterday at 94. He's a songwriter, of course, but how many songwriters wrote a song that the Beatles covered, Maybe It's You, and that Love covered, My Little Red Book, plus hits for Dusty Springfield and so many for Dionne Warwick. So a great career as an influential and unique songwriter. In fact, they talked about his complicated method of putting the tunes together and the changes in tempo and the difficulty in singing them. They sound like
Right.
ditties, but they're difficult to master.
And not only did he put together stuff for Dionne Warwick, but also moved into a generation that included Elvis Costello,
Oh
and
yeah,
Sheryl Crow, and artists of today. Without a
one of my
doubt, a
favorites.
loss.
You got to hear the Everly Brothers version of "Trains and Boats and Planes." Great harmony, and that's an interesting song that Billy Kramer and the Dakotas
Billy
recorded.
J. Kramer and the Dakotas, yes.
Right.
Burt Bacharach could tell a love story better than anybody else in 3 minutes and 15 seconds.
Actually, he never
He
wrote a
could,
word of those love stories. That's Hal David who told the story.
but they could put it together.
Right.
And the interesting, and my favorite, I think, of the non-hits, of the ones that you really got to listen to, is Brooke Benton doing "A
Hmm.
House Is Not a Home."
Oh yeah.
If you're one of those people who have been shaky about a relationship in your life, and you listen to that song, he captures it as well as Bruce Springsteen captures driving to the 7-Eleven, to the Wawa, to grab a Coke at 2 o'clock in the morning after your girlfriend has told you to get the hell out of the house.
One of those songs.
One of the many of those songs. Mikey, have a good
Vinny,
weekend, man. Talk to you on Monday.
Monday it is. See you then, Vinny. Have a good show tomorrow.
All right, man. Peace, love, and Manischewitz, baby.
What a wine.
There you go. Thank you all for listening on YouTube as well as on Facebook. We appreciate you, and we will see you on Monday. Don't forget Drive Time tomorrow morning at 8, right here on Drive Time with New York Vinnie channel. Thanks for listening. Bye-bye now.